Yeah. Alright, this is video number 3 in the knife defense course, and hopefully you watch video number 1 because I give you all the cardinal rules of knife defense. I teach you the moves and movements that we're going to be using to respond to any initial knife attack based on the most popular knife attacks that we're likely to see. And it's at this point that I should probably point out the interesting statistic that 55% of the knife-wielding attackers that we observed in the countless knife fights that we looked at and analyzed, in 55% of those fights, the attacker is wearing sleeves. Sleeves can be used as tools and as weapons. And that's exactly why we're standing here in our vintage karate outfits, aka our jiu-jitsu kimonos, to encourage you to incorporate some gi into your training as much as I resisted it early in my career. Because I'm never wearing my gi to the club or out in the streets when I'm getting into all my fights, so why am I training in these ridiculous pajamas? Well, hear me out. The gi is about using what you got, whatever you got. And every single piece of fabric and every single grip on this thing can be used as a weapon, just as it can be used as a weapon against you on your own person. Extra clothing is a tremendous liability if you don't know what you're doing with it. And jiu-jitsu black belts will tie you up in your own clothes and choke you 6 different ways from Sunday. Now I'm really much more of a tear the entire joint guy than a choke you cleverly by your collar guy, but let's not get too distracted by traditional jiu-jitsu just yet. These god-awful pajamas represent grips. This collar could easily be on a leather jacket, a Canadian tuxedo. This could be on a suit or a nice dress shirt. I can control him with this. I can drag him around, I can break his posture down, and that's not even counting the 550 ways you can choke him to death with this thing. Now you've certainly seen how a good jersey can control somebody's posture, and I'd say your odds of getting into a fight at a sporting event are much higher than when you're just walking down the street. If you get a grip, the game is on. And then there's some clothing that bears a little testing and experience. And originally I got this hoodie out of my closet because I wanted to work with a piece of clothing that had extra fabric, that was loose and that was stretchy. And we actually found that this was still a solid means of control, and I expected it not to be. I thought that when I had him in a sleeve trap position, he was going to be able to move this knife all over the place and cut my arm. All right, here's one of our tests. So Deontay gives a good pull to start, but I maintain downward pressure, keeping his sleeve and collar area controlled until I get my chest on his head to break down his posture. Grab his leg, and now he's over a knee on belly, and I got the knife in hand.
What's up? What's up?
So hoodies work, but there is some extra movement. In fact, the biggest risk that you have when you're in a sleeve trap position is if the guy can rotate his hand around yours and cut the outside of your forearm. But I can stop that from happening by, number 1, securing an outside grip. So look, if I'm on the inside of D's sleeve here, obviously he can just turn the thing in and cut me. But if I can secure an outside grip, or even if let's say I start with an inside grip, that's fine. I'm gonna twist this fabric up and I'm gonna intentionally drive my knuckles into the outside of his forearm and push down. Now if he tries to move this thing around, obviously it's much more difficult, okay? So if I can maintain this position, I'm reasonably safe. So again, if we were to look directly at the camera, instead of being, right here with all this slack right on top of him, I'm gonna twist this up, I drive my knuckles in, and now I'm fundamentally safe. If the guy's even thinking about cutting your wrist, which is difficult to do when he's getting snapped around the room, his feet are getting swept, he's getting punched in the face, his arm is getting isolated and attacked. Again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves here. I'm just trying to introduce you to the outfit and the reasons why we're wearing it. Some forms of control are strong enough that they can save your life. They can stop you from being stabbed, and they can allow you to control the knife arm completely. Having a sleeve is a dominant form of control. And since this dude is holding onto the knife, he can't even participate in the grip fight. And I can hold onto this thing feasibly forever, whereas if I have a wrist, I have nothing. In fact, I'll show you. So let's have a grip fight. Ready? Go. Again. Go. 2 hands. Ready? Go. Go. Yeah. Go. Look, when we're fighting against the knife, we've got to use every advantage that we possibly have. This is nothing. This is dominance. And if we train with the gi, we get used to using everything that we got. And just in case you missed it, unless there is a sleeve, we are never going to try to control the guy's knife hand by grabbing his wrist or his hand or his forearm or any of that stuff. even if we have two hands. And you can feel free to take a look at the results of our tests. In every conceivable two-handed grip that we tested without a sleeve, my control was temporary at best, and I got stabbed a lot. And I lost the vast majority despite my obvious size and strength advantage over Deontay, with a couple exceptions.
Oh, this is better.
So despite the occasional success, my rate of failure was fatally high. 1 victory out of 20 attempts, and I have a strength and size advantage over Deontay. So maybe you can assume that a smaller guy is going to die 100% of the time. So when you test something like this and you realize that you'll die the vast majority of the time, we just don't do that anymore. So our arm isolation game is going to be reserved only for people who have sleeves. And according to my data and the knife attacks that I watched, 55% of knife attackers will have sleeves. And of course, we need a much larger sample size to be sure of that. It might be 50% of the time, but this also varies from season to season. So if you're fighting somebody in January, you can logically expect, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, that he's going to have a damn sleeve on, and you can play the sleeve in the arm isolation game. So effectively, we're going to have a gi strategy and a no gi strategy for knife defense, and you'll have to execute a different strategy depending on what you've got. So remember, I never reach across to control the knife hand because anything on the inside of his knife is going to get cut. Internal rotation is strong, external rotation not so strong. So same side hand, I twist the fabric up, removing any slack. I drive my knuckles down to force his arm on the inside, and I press down. Go ahead and try and cut me. Go ahead and try and cut me. 20 bucks if you cut me. 20 bucks. Quite a bit different than our sleeveless test. Now, my other hand needs to be controlling Deontay's posture and abusing him. Again, this all depends on what you have. If the guy's got a jacket, I have my collar. If he's got a big old winter coat, I can grab any piece of it and make a collar. The material will still hold strong. Having a collar and a sleeve is like a judo fighter's most glorious violent daydream. We have effortless sweeps from here that'll drop the dude onto his back. Of course, we just have to avoid the knife on the way down, and then we're on top of him.
And we can plunge the knife deep into his heart.
You have countless throws. Throws which can end fights by themselves and leave you on top of somebody with control of the sleeve and control of the knife. You can do stuff from here, stuff that takes joints and takes knives.
Or again, you can plunge the knife into his heart.
Now, if you don't have a collar, you can always use the guy's head to break down his posture, boom, which sets up additional strikes and arm isolations that'll actually allow you to ruin this arm. And again, in the spirit of using what you got, I'd like to point out how confused people get when they can't see. Ha!
What's up, man?
That sleeve control into head control into a basic arm drag. It works if you're using what you got.
So these are some of the potential avenues towards victory in our gi strategy. And in my opinion, the coolest testing and the coolest stuff that we did was all in the realm of catching the knife out of the air. I mean, look, if you want to control the guy's sleeve and if you want to get into some of these positions, you literally have to catch the guy's knife hand out of the air as it's on its way to kill you. And we have to be able to do that reliably, safely, and of course, we got to secure the damn sleeve. So look, if you want to learn that stuff, you better believe I'm going to make you buy my knife self-defense course in order to get it. But I have a ton of stuff to show you with respect to both catching knives, the gi strategy. We still have to cover the entire no-gi strategy. We got to put people to sleep. And at the end of the day, we got to not get stabbed to death. We have to win fights, and we got to go home safe. So look, if you want to hear more about that course, I am offering a ridiculously special discount that will never be repeated again, since this is the first time that I'm launching the course. So if you want to hear about that and the ways that'll make you impervious to knife injury, by all means, click the button beneath this video. I'll take you to another video where I tell you all about it. And otherwise, have a fantastic day, and don't get stabbed. Ready? Go!
Try to get that knife out, D.
I'm trying, dude. I'm trying. It's just your game. It's just this. I'm at your mercy, dude. There's nothing. I'm just defending moves at this point. Let me go home.
That's a wrap.
All right, dude.
Well done. Thanks, buddy. And thank you for watching.
Yeah.